Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Rogue Agent Answers. My name is the Rogue Agent. Some people call me David Lewis, and every week I answer one of the many life insurance related questions that I've received from clients, from email subscribers on the daily email list, questions floated to me from across the interwebs, in the comments sections, which I know you're not supposed to read, or just interactions that I've had with people in real life over the past 20 years, which is a long time. And some of these questions I just scribbled down on scrap pieces of paper. Some of these are stuff I've written down on my phone. Some of it is on Post-it notes scattered all over the office. And every week I answer one of those questions. So if you'd like to ask your question, drop them in the comments section or join my email list for more life insurance tips and advice at monogenics.com. monegenics.com. And now for this week's question.
Hello, and welcome back to another week, another question. And let's see what we got here. What is the difference between the EPPUA rider and the APPUA rider? Okay. So this appears to be a question about a specific life insurance company's paid up additions riders. Okay, so I'll address this. First of all, I normally don't like to talk about names, but because it's specifically about these two specific riders, this is referring to Penn Mutual, which is a mutual life insurance company. Penn Mutual's paid up additions rider. Every mutual life insurance company that sells a participating whole life policy, I'm not saying every company has one, but they have the ability to create that product for their policies, for their products. Most of them do have a paid up additions rider. It's become more or less a common and standard feature on a participating whole life policy. The way that they work across different carriers differs. I mean, every company has its own little quirks and rules and so forth and how they work. At Penn Mutual, they have two different paid up additions riders. And there's, if I remember correctly, the EPPUA is the enhanced permanent paid up additions, and the APPUA is the accelerated permanent paid up additions. So they do two different things. So the paid up additions rider, the paid up additions rider of a whole life policy, just speaking broadly, the paid up additions rider is a single premium policy that is added or stacked on top of the base whole life policy. So you have your foundation, which they call base whole life, and then the paid up additions gets kind of stacked on top of that. Once it's added to the policy, it can be surrendered for its cash value or borrowed against. It earns its own cash value. The death benefit generates its own cash value. It also generates its own dividends, has its own death benefit, et cetera, and so on. Technically, it is separate from the base part of the whole life policy, and it's going to be shown as a separate component of your policy. And some companies break it out, like Penn Mutual does actually break it out, so you can see, the difference between base and whole life and paid up additions. However, when you, as the policyholder, look at the combined values of your policy, it's going to look like one big policy. So if you get like I know from personal experience and knowing, because I get the annual statements and stuff on our policy, it's when Penn Mutual sends out their annual statements, they do break it down. They show you the total, but they also break it down. But if you look at the summary on your client portal, if you log into Penn Mutual's back office there, and you're actually a policyholder at Penn Mutual, the first thing you see is sort of like the summary number. It shows you like the whole thing. And then you have to kind of click in and it breaks everything down, itemizes everything. So the EPPUA and the APPUA rider refer specifically to Penn Mutual's paid up additions riders. And so the EPPUA enhances the policy by stacking death benefit on top of the face amount of the policy. It's used when there's no term, one of two situations. Either when there is no term rider added to when there is no term rider that's added to the policy, but the policyholder wants the ability to add more money to the policy than what the base policy would otherwise allow, or it can be used as part of the flexible protection rider in combination with a flexible protection rider. Which is Penn Mutual's term blending option that allows you to use a combination of decreasing term and increasing paid up additions. And then on top of that, you would add either the EPPUA or APPUA. I know I'm kind of getting off into the weeds, but this is more kind of inside baseball with the policy design stuff. But anyway, so what ends up anyway, either way that you use this, whether it's with the flexible protection rider or without any term blending at all, it works kind of the same way. And by stacking death benefit on top of your base face amount, it causes the death benefit to grow and also the cash value. The APPUA rider is sometimes used with a term blended whole life, which it allows the policyholder to direct premiums to accelerate the internal conversion of the term rider to basically to speed up reduce the time it takes to pay off the term rider on the policy, or to reduce the amount of term that's been blended in. So if you're using that flexible protection rider, it gets rid of that more quickly if you start pumping the APPU rider with more premiums. So it also does help grow the death benefit, but not in a different way. It just depending on the specific design of the policy, it's either going to reduce the risk of adding a term rider to your policy, since the premiums that you put in there are going to use to accelerate the payoff of the term rider, or it's going to help grow the policy. Again, it just depends on how the thing is set up and how you're using the APPUA. But the primary thing is it's getting rid of the term rider that's on the policy quicker, and then after that, it can help grow the death benefit. Anyway, I hope that helps. I know it was like hyper specific to one life insurance company, although as I said, there's a lot of companies have paid up additions riders, and they all kind of sort of work in a very similar way. Not necessarily the same way, but they work in a very similar way. And so anyway, that if you kind of get this idea, maybe you can kind of extrapolate that. If I get another question about other carriers or or just paid up additions in general, I'll address that in another Q&A. But anyway, thanks for listening, and I hope that helps somebody, and I'll see you in the next one.
Okay, that's it for this week's question. If you'd like to add your question to the list, just drop them in the comment section or send me an email. And if you want more life insurance tips and advice, just head on over to monogenics.com, monegeniix.com, and sign up for my daily email list.